Good morning folks, my name is Arun Chetur and I am going to explain the Italian game. The Italian game begins with white playing e4, black e5. Now these two moves controls the centers, two center squares, and develops the queen and bishop for opens up the queen and bishop for both players. Now white plays solid knight to f3, developing a piece, attacking the e5 pawn and also controlling the center. Now black needs to defend this e5 pawn, and he does so by playing knight to c6. Here he defends the e5 pawn and develops a piece. Now the Gyoko piano begins with bishop c4, which attacks the weak f7 pawn, and bishop c5, which does the same, that is attacks the f2 pawn. Now as you can see here, after bishop c4, white is prepared to castle, and white's next intention is to play d4 after c3. Now we'll go as per the plan. White decides to play c3, planning to play d4. Black plays knight to f6. White now plays d4, and normally what's seen here is pawn takes pawn, and bishop b4 check. Now white plays knight to c3, taking advantage of the fact that this knight is pinned. Black captures the pawn on e4. Now this is a forced move for white to castle. If he doesn't, say something like he plays b3, his pawn takes bishop takes knight, pawn takes bishop, and d5 is quite bad for white. So after knight takes pawn, castling is the best option. Now after bishop takes c3, d5, knight to e5. Now pawn takes bishop, knight takes c4, and queen to d4. Here black has an option. Usually what's played is knight cd6. However, black can try f5 here, which I'll be explaining this variation in my next video. However, what was played in this game was knight cd6. Now white continues with queen to g7. Black plays queen f6. Now white decides to exchange queens. Rook e1. Here king f8 is also quite a forced move, because if king to d8, now after bishop g5, knight e8 and rook takes e8, it's a win for white, because after rook captures rook and bishop takes knight, after these moves, black's crushed. So instead of king to d8, king to f8 is the better option. Now white plays bishop to h6, king to g8. Now white threatens mate on g5. Black defends by playing knight f to e4. Rook e1. Black plays f6. Rook e7, intending check on g7. Now black defends with knight f5. That's also a forced move. There's no other piece that can defend this g7 square. Here white plays a good move, that is rook e8. Now white wins a piece after king to f7. Now note that black cannot take this bishop on h6, because rook takes e4 is crushing actually. So after rook takes h8, knight takes c3 is a better option. Now the bishop has to move, otherwise since the knight is no longer on e4, bishop d2 has to be played. Now knight takes d5, rook e8. If you note here, this bishop is trapped. It cannot move, it's blockading, the pawns are blockading the bishop's movement. Now here knight d6 is a forced move. Now it's attacking the rook, so the rook has to move. King e7. Now bishop h6 is planning to attack the king on f8. Now king e6. Bishop f8 as planned. Now this knight has to move to c4. If knight doesn't move, suppose he plays something like b6, trying to free the bishop. Bishop takes d6, pawn takes d6, rook takes c8, rook takes c8, and after this, white wins. So, knight c4 is a forced move. Now rook takes h7, knight d6 again, rook to h8, again has to play knight c4. Now white plays knight to d4, king e5, knight to b5, king to e6, f4. Now black plays d6, trying to free the bishop, I believe. Now knight d4 check. Now it's going to be pretty much clear that white is winning here. Knight e7, rook to h7 check, king g6, rook takes e7 after king takes h6, rook h8 check, king g6, rook h8 7. Oh. Rook h, sorry, I made a mistake there. It's rook h7. After now the thing is there is a mate on g7 after rook e7. King black will be mated, so f5 is again a forced move. However, the case rook e g7, king f6, rook f7, and white dominates the game completely, and white wins. I hope you all enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching. Please do comment. If you have any further doubts, I'll be available at arunchetu.blogspot.com.